Hey, everybody. What I want to talk about is there is a lot of talk in the spiritual community, a lot of perceptions as it pertains to ego, what's spiritual, who's egoic, and all of this. Dualistic madness, which is really dualistic beauty, that exists within this realm, okay, of this existence to be on this particular planet. And what I want to say about that is, first of all, there are varying types of delivery of source that has to come through, okay? So I got on this because I've seen it. I've heard these discussions. I've seen it. I've had this energy directed towards me. I've seen it directed towards others. I've heard the conversations. But recently, I saw, a lot of people talking about Eckhart Tolle's life partner, and they're like, why would he choose this egoic entity as his life partner, and blah blah blah. And so I thought I would shed some light on things like this. There are different ways that the work of evolution, the process of evolution, and the people who are, taking part in that process, which we all are, okay? Some of us are consciously taking that role and process, but we all are, whether we're conscious of it or not. But there are people, okay, that are more, can seem less empathetic or less, they can be intimidating to some people. And some people tend to look at those people and say that they're less spiritual, and they have this judgment or this belief, okay, about what spirituality is. And so then they look at someone who seems more meek and, hello, dearest ones. We are gathered here today for me to impart upon you wisdom from source. People that come across in that kind of way, they tend to see as more spiritual. And the understanding that's missing is that, first of all, to engage in this reality with other people, you're automatically going to be stepping into some form of ego. You have to do it through the body, okay? That's the way this dimension operates. So whether it's a spiritual ego, hello, beloveds, I'm going to talk a bit today about whether it's that ego or whether it's a different type. The thing is, that other type that people don't really understand is necessary, okay? So remember, this is a dualistic reality where everything exists with its opposite. Okay, so when you yourself are really stuck in the duality in a real way, then everything is kind of one side or the other. This is why you get people who are just so into love. Love is all there is. And it's like, that's dualistic, that's off. That's not the truth either. Truth is neutral. Truth is not on one side or the other. So you're out of the truth when you're doing that, period. You're coming a bit down from the consciousness even to communicate. So the minute you start talking, you already have to lower your consciousness to even communicate. Because from that highest level of consciousness, where your consciousness is truly in the really, really high dimensions, there's nothing to say. There would be nothing to do. There would be no reason to talk. Okay? So even coming down to talk, the minute you're talking, you're on a lower level. You're lowering your consciousness, which is not a bad thing. See, that's the duality. Oh, that's a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Okay? Because the truth is, spirituality and the moving of source energy is not in any of these judgments that people have. And source energy is the I am that I am. See, so when you're enlightened, what you do is you just allow yourself to move as you need to move. I am that I am. There's no I need to be old, beloved ones, or then I always need to be the source energy that cuts straight through the ego. Because this is what people don't understand about that seemingly unempathetic or more intimidating energy that they will think is not spiritual, even if the information is enlightened. See, if the information is enlightened, there's enlightenment there. Okay, so something's going on here that you're not understanding. So when that person is doing that, what it is source does not move only in one way. See, at times within our journey, if every enlightened person was just like, hello there, beloved ones, and they had that whole thing going on, which is what people tend to see as more spiritual because of their own, them being in their own dualistic thinking. If every enlightened person operated that way, there would not be as many people getting to their enlightenment. See, because there is a certain way that source, and this is love too, cut straight through that ego, because this is what happens. Okay, and I'm going to tell you the way that your source expresses itself through you predominantly, because when you're enlightened, source can express itself through you in every form. You can have those moments of hello, beloveds, and then the next minute there's something else. It varies. Okay, because I am that I am. I will be what I will be. There is no anytime there's a crystallization of what you are, you're in ego. So if there's a crystallization, I am pure consciousness, and you crystallize into I am pure consciousness. No, you're not. You're in the ego. You have an ego identity of being pure consciousness. You have an ego identity of being spiritual. Okay, it's the same thing. But just because you have the judgment of this ego is better than that ego, that's where it gets into, people thinking that this one is so much more spiritual. What you have to look at is what's going on behind the veil with what's being said and the impact that it has on the souls. Because this is what will happen, okay? If all spiritual teachers were that way that people want them to be, you would have people. There are times in your own journey, wherever you encounter it in your journey, early on, later, wherever, where something has to bypass the ego, because this is what will happen. The ego will take that information from that person that's so meek and seemingly empathetic, and the ego is tricky. It will use that information to coddle itself. Okay, so basically what you would be doing, if all spiritual teachers were that way, then some of them who are not supposed to be doing that, because it's not supposed to be all of them doing the same thing. The ones that who are not following, letting things flow through them the way that it naturally would, some of them would end up copying, trying to be spiritual, quote unquote, like these other ones, and trying to seem enlightened to get that approval, to help the ego feel spiritual. And they would be talking to people whose egos need cutting, like to cut through, to penetrate through the ego, to allow more presence to come into the being of that person. Okay. But what will happen is, because of the way that they're talking, and they're not sharp enough, they're not cutting through the ego mind, they can't knock that down. So what happens is that ego will then take that information and coddle itself. So the person will listen to the information and think, yes, this person's very spiritual, but guess what? It won't get down in them. So as soon as they finish listening to the information, the ego will rise back up and come up with some pattern of thinking that puts them right back where they were. Okay, so that information didn't actually do anything for them, even though in the moment they were sitting there listening to it like, yes, this is enlightened, and they're taking it in, but it can't penetrate them deep enough. So this is where you have other people that are positioned in the world where they will hear that person will cut through the ego so tough, so strong, and so, penetrate through it in such a way that the ego cannot recover itself fully to coddle itself with that information. So it kills that part of the ego. This is the thing. People who do that, the people who are sharper, who seem harsher, that seem so much, it hurts more when you listen to them. The reason being is that they kill more of the ego. Okay, the ego can't easily recover from that light. When that light shines into that darkness, the ego can't easily come up with a way to recover from. It has to acknowledge that truth. And so that is more painful. So the people who are out here that are so bothered by these people and so upset by this form of love, this form of source energy, the reason that is, it's the ego that's upset about it. See, these things are healing to the soul. The soul is, you get more presence within your being from these people. And the ego is the one that actually is upset about it. It's the ego that takes the hit. Okay, so it's the ego that feels the most pain from it. The soul isn't hurt. The soul doesn't hurt. So if something hurts, it's not you, it's not the soul that's hurting when you hear that information. It's the ego and the part of the ego that is being killed by that information. So this is why those people are not as popular or, as embraced. It's because of the ego is not as embracing of those people. Okay? Not to say that either one is greater or less than the other. That in and of itself is not enlightened. To look at spiritual teachers and say this one is better, no, that one. Now, it's what is the impact on the soul? Are souls getting free from that information? Is light coming into more beings because of that information? You don't look at it just through your physical eyes. And this is why people don't understand that. And and the ego will surely, that's another trick. The ego, go to people who are empathetic. A lot of times this is what the ego do. Because remember, the ego is tricky. It has to find a way to keep itself alive. That's what it does. So say, for instance, you come across, you're at a point in your journey where the ego needs to, certain areas need to get slaughtered. I call it trimming the fat, which I'm good at doing because of how big of an ego I had. See, I know how the ego works with my own. So I remember how tricky my ego would be when I would listen to spiritual teachers who would talk so meek and things like that. My ego would overpower that information and come up with something where I'm not taking it all the way in. There were, unfortunately, I felt there were not enough people who would just trim the fat. Okay, let's not play the game. Trim the fat. I'm a person who I like to just accelerate. Like, let's get it done. Yeah, it's going to hurt, but I want to get it done because I know that the things that are causing me suffering, I'm better off letting go of them even if it hurts. Okay, so that's what's going on with that. There are fat trimmers, that kind of just cut that stuff away, help you get rid of it faster. And it hurts more to the ego, not the soul. The soul is in a better place afterwards. And so there's that. And then there's the people who don't realize the idea of the way you're automatically going into ego or into duality to even communicate. So from those really high dimensions, there's nothing to say. Why? Well, for one, everything is perfect and you realize there's nothing wrong. Okay, there's absolutely nothing wrong here. So whether it looks evil or looks good, you can see the whole way that it's all connected and that it's working for the good. So there's nothing wrong to comment on, first of all. So from that place, you can't see anything wrong. This is what people don't realize. So when they even get in that mindset where they're like, well, you're doing this way and this is wrong, and spiritual teachers doing that's wrong. You're down here already to even be saying that. Because from the highest levels of consciousness, there's never anything wrong. So just the fact that there's nothing wrong, that right there will cut down a lot of what you would even say. Because what is there to say if nothing's really wrong? And then there would be no reason to really interact. There would be no reason. For one, nothing's wrong. And then people don't need you. From that higher level of consciousness, see, it's even the ego that feels like it has to have some purpose. Like, I'm spiritual and my purpose here is to do this. That's the ego to begin with, to even feel that you have a spiritual purpose of helping other people evolve. It's the ego that even thinks that. Because from those very high dimensions of consciousness, you can see how people really don't need you. And what I mean by that is they are so loved by the universe that whether you're there or not, their path is going to continue. You are a speck. You are a drop in the entire ocean, but yet you are the ocean in an entire drop. So you know, from that higher place, they don't even need you. So they don't need you and nothing's wrong. What is there to say? When you're in those really high levels of consciousness, there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to teach. There's no language. Even to start getting into the language itself will split the truth into a duality. So everything you try to say is a half truth. You can't give the whole truth in the language because the language is going to divide the truth the minute you bring it down from those higher dimensions. So if you see that, okay, there's nothing wrong here. This person actually doesn't need me. They're going to be fine if I didn't even wake up tomorrow, because the universe loves them so much. And then if I try to convey what I'm going to convey to them, soon as I bring it down to put it in the language, it's going to get split in half, and I can't convey a full truth in language. Why would I even talk? So you see how from those higher dimensions, there's nothing to do. You're not going to see anybody that's just totally in those high dimensions of consciousness even talking to you. You have to come down in the consciousness to speak, to even feel like you want to say something to somebody that will help them on their journey. You have to come down to even start splitting the truth into the language to get a part of the truth, the part that's necessary right now, out for the person to be able to take their next step. So you're taking the language, you're going to take the truth, you're going to split it in a way that, because you have to, in order to use language to get it out. So now I'm going to take the truth, I have to dilute it or divide it to go into the language. And then I'm going to take the part that the person needs that doesn't need me, to help them on the next step of their journey to fix what's wrong when nothing's wrong. You see what I'm saying? What's the point? So people need to get out of this mindset that you're out here, that people are out here even teaching from these high levels of consciousness, that you can't bring that down here into the language. It's a knowing. Now, and what it would happen if there were two people together who were both in that really high dimension of consciousness, we could communicate and relate, but guess what? We wouldn't use words. There would be nothing to say. We couldn't talk about it. What would be the point of that? Then we would be taking the beauty of the whole interaction and dividing it up into the language and giving half of it. What would be the purpose of even doing that? So from those dimensions, there's no point in any of this. So that is the nature of this realm. This is the reason why I don't get caught up in it. I don't get caught up in it needs to be this. It doesn't matter, because guess what? Yes, everything I say is a part of the truth. I'm giving the part that I need. I know what that word is going forth to accomplish. Okay? I'm not here to say everything that I'm saying at every moment is the whole truth of what I'm saying. No, there's always more I could say. If we were having a discussion, you and I, then we could, if you wanted to get deeper into those other parts, we can keep bringing out the parts of it to create the whole. But that's not what's being done when you're teaching something. You're sending forth a word to accomplish what it is going forth to accomplish. You only need the part that's going to cut away this part of the ego that needs to be cut, that's going to bring the light in there where it needs to be. And that's the whole point. But this is all busy work of this reality. Even doing spiritual teachings and making videos and teaching other people, groups of people, and so, quote unquote, helping them in their evolution. This is busy work of the reality to begin with. None of this is necessary. Nobody is needed for any of this. But that's what we do here. That's the nature of this realm. We do things. And so we do it. So why make it a deal? Why make it a deal? It is what it is. That's the nature of this reality. So I don't judge myself that I have to come down to communicate, and I have to. But then when I come down to communicate and get a message across, I got to make sure that I don't look like I came down. So that people will think I'm spiritual. So when I come down, let me come down this way. That's too much. I don't do that. That's too much work. And it's unnecessary work. It's unnecessary work. But once again, I don't judge the people that do it, because guess what? It's all perfect. So the people that do it, that do come down from those higher dimensions of consciousness, and then they come down, but they want to look like they didn't come down so that the people will hear their message better. I don't knock them for that. That's necessary too, because guess what? That person who wouldn't listen to a person who didn't have the spiritual appearance, they need the information too. So I'm glad the person did come down and look like they didn't. But I have to stay in my lane. I'm not that. There's somebody for that. So every person and whatever they're looking for to get the messages, there's somebody for that. If you want cut straight through the ego, I'm good at that. I'm not good at everything. I'm not sometimes I am. Because I am that I am. In some moments, I'm that spiritual ideal. I've had sessions with people because that's what it calls for in the moment. Let source flow. Let it be what it will be. I don't try to put it in a box. It needs to be this way. Oh, not right now. Oh, that, I just don't do that. Just let it be. Let it come how it comes. There will be moments where it flows in a way, I might have some cuss words in there. Then another time it's like it can flow in a way that would appear, have a more spiritual appearance. It doesn't matter. Is it doing the work? Is it edifying? Is it helping people? Is it healing souls? Is it giving light? That's all that matters. And see, this is where people also don't understand the difference between soul love and ego love. Ego love is about the physical reality. See, I love you when I make you feel good. Loving you in a physical egoic sense is going to only be in what makes you feel good. I love you, so I hug you, I coddle you. From that higher levels of the consciousness, there is no love is love. So a person who punches me in the face can love me. And what that means is, what are they doing for my soul? Loving me is what's beneficial for my soul. So the person who hurts my ego and helps my soul loves me, even though that hurt what they said. See, so that's a whole other thing when you get into the true understanding of love in the first place. So to even think that, that's not love, it is. It is. Love has different forms. Love, just like spirituality takes different forms, love takes different forms. See, these are things you cannot put into your mental construct and really try to make it into a certain thing within this reality. It's going to divide it. You're not going to see the truth of what it actually is. You can't see the truth of love just through the physical reality. You can't see the truth of spirituality through the physical reality, because it's so much more than that. True spirituality does not look spiritual. That's a belief within the reality. That's a program. That spirituality looks like this. And then love, when you try to look at that through the physical reality, love looks like this. And so love doesn't look like the pain. Which in reality, not in reality, in truth, it looks like both. Because remember, truth is neutral. Balance is in the middle. So love looks like both. But that's, like I said, remember, when I pull it down and put it through the language, you split it already. So there's more I could even say on everything I just said. So I just wanted to say that to bring some more pieces of the puzzle, for people to, kind of put this together when they're looking at spiritual information, when they're thinking about what they think love is and these different things. This is something to think about, just some extra insight there to be provided. Okay. So that's that, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.